now live.
Don't you just love the backdrop?
We're talking about the conspiracy of goodness. When I came in and I saw that backdrop, my stomach sort of dropped. Like I was like, where's the connection? He said, Andy, this is what a conspiracy face looks like. And I didn't have any association with this show because it's exactly the opposite of that picture that I have in my mind.
Actually, it's from a movie, V for Vendetta.
I love that movie.
I love that movie too.
And we are going to be talking to Lynda Ulrich, and I'm hoping that's the pronunciation of the name. Actually, we didn't ask her. We'll ask if she's nodding, so we can affirm that is correct. And we're going to talk to her about the conspiracy of goodness. And what we mean by that is somebody making the time and effort to take all the good news in the world and make it more and more available to the world so that we're no longer only inundated with the bad stuff.
Exactly.
And where are you and I going to do that, Mr. Dimitriou?
Mr. Shalev, we're apparently going to do it on A Wonderful Chaos.
Yes, we are. Hey, Bambos.
Hey, Andy, the conspiracy of goodness.
The conspiracy of goodness. I had discussions with Lynda because I talked to her. She contacted me after the last letter, or after the Wounded Healer book came out.
The Wounded Healer book.
Yeah, the Wounded Healer, because she heard it. She got news. I think it was actually it was a press release done, and she, I think, and she'll nod if I'm correct. She saw the press release, and she's tracking stories which are apolitical, which have no commercial agenda, which are just things that people are doing that are for the goodness of the planet.
Yeah.
And so she obviously connected to my story, probably was trying to figure out, Andy, what are you trying to get out of this? God forbid, who could actually just do an act of love in the world and not have an agenda? And then she asked if we could call, and I said, obviously, we could speak, and we did.
Yeah.
And that was several months ago. And she has a website, which is called everwideningscircles.com from 1994, I think, or 2014. It was a 4 in there somewhere. So from 2014, she just said, and keep in mind, she by trade, she's a dentist.
She's got good teeth, actually.
She does, doesn't she? And she smiles well as well. So she's taking care of people's teeth. And every time someone comes in, the discussion is, how's life? And I'm sure that most of those discussions had the negative news that they just read before they came into the doctor's chair. Yeah. So in some weird way, like, she's doing the best sort of market research only by saying, I have hundreds of people I'm interacting with on a regular basis. They're coming to me. And what am I hearing? I'm hearing about the dread, about the planet deterioration. I'm hearing about political turmoil. And what she said was, I'm going to create a space that reinvents our way of thinking about things. Because the truth be told, if you can create a space that's just full of negativity, why couldn't you do the same thing for positivity? Why can't we just say there is a place you can go in the world if you want to feel good? And not just feel good like pithy feel good. Like, there's honest people doing things in the world which are beautiful. And if you allow yourself to soak that energy up, how does that change your day? And so she spent the last years finding people, and I've now flattered as I hear it, because obviously her finding me, obviously she identified something in what I was doing that she could connect to, and then highlighting that on her website. And she wrote a book, and she actually did a great TED Talk.
What's the name of the book?
The name of the book here is Happiness is, in a capital IS, an Option. And what I see in the TED Talk, and what I've seen in all of her talks, which I really love, is that she really describes in a way what one needs or could or would be invited to do if they wanted to shift this negative reinforcing loop of going to information that pulls them away from connection in themselves. So what is it that we now, all of a sudden, we get triggered, we click on the clickbait, takes us away from this very present moment, and then we're stuck in somebody else's dread, right? And the funny thing is, as you know, Google's tracking all of our dread. So what do? They give us more dread. So in a weird way, she had a really good
symptoms of COVID, and all of a sudden on your Facebook feed, it's like, have you checked it? Have you had the test?
Yeah, exactly. So she uses really nice acronyms. I believe there's an ABC acronym that she might share with us of all the 3 ways that you can get pulled out of just being in a connected state through interacting with the internet. So what she's really, and we'll talk to her about it, is saying, how do you create a life discipline around your internet so that you don't get wrapped up and stuck in these negative thought patterns? And she's written a book. She's done this TED Talk. And yeah, I really found that to be a nice thing to bring on to discuss. I also, independently of this, wanted to show you something very important. And this is something that was sent to one of our favorite viewers, JC Barnett. So for the last year, JC has put little icons on for a year, and we had no clue that he was trying to communicate to us through these icons.
I can see now. Yeah.
And so what he did, and I'll put it on the screen, he sent me a way to interpret his icons going forward, because he saw I didn't understand it. So he's got his little question face, which means I'm thinking.
Say what?
He's got his thing confusion. Like, say what? He's like, his one is cool with my confusion, because when he watches our show, he often says, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm okay with it. And then he's like, stay strong. So that's when he sees us, I'm good, you're good, right?
What's the last one?
Everyone has a first day. My first day is with glasses. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Shock and awe. He had a lot of that yesterday. I don't know if you saw, and that's why he sent it to me, because he kept sending me shock and awe because the show was a bit edgy, and I didn't know what he was trying to communicate to us. And then he has this face with a beer next to it's whatever. So now, from this moment forward, JC, we have your conversion next to our computer.
We're going to be decoding you.
And we'll be decoding you. So thank you for that.
Feel free to
send those icons right over, and we will know. Very much appreciate it.
When I think about goodness, you mentioned happiness, right?
Yeah.
I find it to be a lot of work, and it has to be consistent. I mean, we've talked in the past, and for you, it is a way of being. And we've talked about also what are the rituals we can implement to practice that, but to the point where we become dependent on the rituals.
Yeah.
Then it just takes you away. So how to actually live this?
Yeah, we'll have that. I certainly believe if you want to have a very deep sort of happiness from coming from within, then there has to be an elevated consciousness in some degree, because it's very easy to get pulled away from it if you're just if your environment defines it.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think Lynda is going to have a lot to share on that front as well. So I think it would be great to bring her on. Hello.
Hello, I'm so delighted to be here.
My first question to you is, how is my teeth?
I was just noticing that you both had very nice smiles.
I have yellow teeth, though. Baumbos doesn't, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
so.
Everyone should have yellow teeth. That's the actual color of our teeth.
Is that right?
It's true.
Oh, funny. Okay.
Yeah. If your teeth are the color of a sheet of paper, it's chemically induced.
Got it.
I'm so scared of dentists that I brush twice a day for an extensive time.
Yeah. When I turned 50, I started to realize that like self-care was no longer a choice. It was like, if you don't want to have your gums scraped, use these wooden sticks every night. It's the worst. But hey, you pay for admission into the 50 club. Yeah.
I think there's something about turning 50 that makes you think more about your 20 years from now self. I never thought about my 20 years from now self. Never.
That is such a beautiful statement. I mean, every time because I lost about 3 kilos in the last weeks, and you're totally right. I'm totally thinking about what is that 70-year-old Andy, if he makes it there, going to look like, and I don't want him to look like that guy that I don't want to look like.
Well, you're so right. I have a lot of these insights. My patients have given me more insight than I'll ever be able to give back to the world. But that's one of the things that I learned from people. So when I took over this practice at 27, a lot of people were 50. And now I know them 27 years later.
Wow.
And these are the things we have to,
Yeah.
by age 50, you better start thinking about your
Yeah.
77-year-old self.
Now, question for you. 1994, I keep saying 2014, 7 years ago. Now, what is it that goes in your mind to say, I'm going to create something in the world that's diametrically opposed to everything else in the world?
Well, I have to say, Andy, your introduction, you are one of those people that does the work. You did your homework. I've never had anybody introduce me as accurately as you just did. That's exactly what happens. I have my own Nielsen rating system in this office because my husband and I see 20 to 50 people a day, and we can pose a question all day long or learn anything we want from these deep relationships. And that's how you described it, is exactly how it happened. My dad was one of those physicians that took care of birth to death.
Yeah.
And I learned to keep the humanity in healthcare from watching one of the last of the Mohicans do it. And so my husband, who's my childhood sweetheart, we have this dental practice together. We both grew up seeing this way of being present for others. And so we went all in our dental practice, and it happened just the way you described it. Over the many years, we were always finding something to celebrate with every single person who came. No matter what was going on in their lives, we were just that way. We could find something to celebrate with them. And by 2014, well, actually, it started about 2011, 12. We think things are bad now, but they were starting for sure.
Yeah.
Around 2011, 12, 13, and I would say, "How are you doing, Anne?" Somebody I'd known who was cheerful her whole life, and we would get into these downward spiral conversations, which never happened before.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, "Oh gosh, somebody needs to do something about this. This is terrible. There's got to be a place where we can get our news that includes the whole picture." Because I want to say from the outset here, I get accused of having rose-colored glasses, but that's not at all what we're shooting for. We're just saying, hey, it's important to have all the information before you make decisions in life that you can possibly access. I mean, and we're only getting a slice of reality in our news life and in our internet life. So we're just offering more information.
What I found fascinating when I did the trip and I was hitting the media and saying, I'm doing this beautiful journey and I'm taking the time and doing these sessions, I could see that it didn't have the edginess that was needed for most of these television networks. It was almost like a feel-good story. Really? Do we need, is that going to do better than the strangler that's being on prison? No, people really want to see that one.
Okay. So, and there's a reason for that. And I'm not, boy, you got to press me hard to find blame. It just is, I just find it an unuseful thing that I just don't do. I try and be thoughtful and helpful. And there's a reason for what you just, the observation you just made, Andy. It's that the internet, the news, the construct that we have there is an attention economy. It always has been. I mean, even Walter Cronkite, for anybody who remembers that guy who only got our attention for 30 minutes a day, that's what the news used to be, by the way.
Yeah.
Not 24/7. He had to sell laundry detergent or whatever. And so it's all about getting and keeping our attention.
Yeah.
And there's some neuroscience to that is pretty interesting that we can't escape. Our brains are built the way they are through millions of years of evolution. And all my message is asking us to pause, to just not follow this primitive part of our brain, our lizard brain, the amygdala, over a cliff every second of every day.
Yeah.
It's the way we're built to look for signs of danger and disorder. That's what got us here. I always say to people, if you're here, it's because your ancestors, your caveman ancestors, were really good at bad news.
Yeah.
They listened around the fire about that place where the last saber-toothed tiger was seen, So I just find it more elevating to think about what's possible with this big brain that we've got and just stop with these primitive impulses that we've been following that were really useful at one point, but when you create something as big as the internet and as influential in our future, you've got to also do a little bit of looking at the re-engineering of what we give our attention to.
Yeah. I noticed when I was traveling to the US, especially after 9/11, I was lucky because I wasn't living in the US then. So it was almost like I got these snapshots. So I would drop in, see the behavior that felt very foreign to me, and then I'd leave again. And one of the things I remember I was at my hotel doing my little fitness on the machine before the meetings. Yes, I did do that sometimes, Bambos. He doesn't believe me because he see me let my body go. But I'm sitting there watching the TV, and on the TV, they're showing terrorist alerts on a daily basis. So fear, be fearful, it's an orange day. Be fearful, it's a red day. And all I could think of was this Orwellian world that's being created where I've instilled so much fear. And I could feel, just being in the environment, this palpable fear that was being just fed into the system.
Collective.
Yeah. Very collective.
Yeah. I've had similar experiences. I've lived abroad a couple times. My husband and I carry Irish passports, and so we travel a lot. And when people say, "Oh, where are you from?" our answer in whatever language, we quickly learn how to say near Montreal. And we do live about an hour south of Montreal in the United States, in Vermont.
Yeah.
But we were never prepared to have that conversation on a bus or wherever we were with folks, because we Americans, we do have a tendency to, to gun it along with whatever social thing is flying. We just really are.
And a lot of judgment, a lot of harsh judgment. We're in the Netherlands. We do have a very direct culture here that verges on offensive to many. But in the US, there's a lot of because you've got the especially, we won't go into the politics, but when I was there, because I was there in December and January of this year during a lot of political upheaval. And what I saw was that actually the tension is so great that to find anything to unify them has to go way beyond it. So with this conspiracy of goodness, obviously, we mentioned a little bit earlier that everyone can identify with this and they all feel called to connect with it because it's what makes life beautiful. And yet we spend all of our time in the areas that actually take us away from that beauty, which is just absurd.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to cut up. I cut people some slack, myself included, because I'm doing a second TED Talk actually right now. It's on sticky notes on the board beside me, and what your comment just now reminded me of something I'm going to talk about in that talk. So our brains are wired for 2 million years to constantly seek signs of danger and disorder. That's what our lizard brain does, and that's what kept us safe back in the days of the saber-toothed tiger, right? It was our most precious part of our brain. We could hear the slightest twig snap, and we would relate it to the sign of danger or disorder. So that's built in. That's our hardware. We're stuck with that.
Yeah.
But there's this concept that no one even knew about 10 years ago called neuroplasticity. Like, our brains are not set in stone. What we experience every day, day after day, is actually changing our brain. There's this great story about the London cabbies. They have to memorize 25,000 streets. And they've done studies that look at their brain before and after their training, and it fundamentally changes part of their brain that's seeable on brain scans. And it just emphasizes the point that if what we give our attention to expands. Around the new year, that was my message through all that craziness in the United States. I was getting lots of interviews on news and stuff. And I think
Could you slow down on that a second? Just because it's such a simple statement, but it has. So what you focus on, was that the term you used?
What we give our attention to expands.
Yeah.
And I do mean give our attention to. Because this part of our brain, the amygdala, our lizard brain that's constantly on the search for danger and disorder, is going to run in the background.
Yeah.
all the time. It's have you ever been asleep and you smell one molecule of smoke and you sit straight up in the bed? You know, that's your amygdala. When you pull your hand away from a hot wood stove without thinking, that's your amygdala. So it is scanning our world at all times. Social media, the news, conversations with friends, the street we're walking down, for signs of danger and disorder. God, God bless the fact that we had this built-in wiring.
Yeah.
And and by the way, I haven't thought of a really good expression that works like God bless. I know you mentioned that that your community is expansive.
I mean, Bolalong, who's one of our favorite, he's actually the third person on the sofa. He's not offended if you say God bless, but he is offended if you start spouting out beliefs which are limiting and then forcing society to get stuck. So we have to be fair to him in that sense, is that he has no issue with religion. He has an issue with the imposition of beliefs that don't serve people. That's the more correct way of saying it.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Well, I haven't found a replacement for that expression. So the minute somebody tells me, because the sentiment in that it really really works for me when I think of these poor the way we're all struggling.
Yeah.
We're all struggling. We all are built for one thing, and society requires us to be another right now. And oh gosh, it's so complicated.
Just as a quick side, someone tried to pitch me an idea once that they wanted to sell to the school system in the U.S. And I remember I was so overwhelmed with how bad I thought it was. I said, "God bless you." That was the only thing I could come up with that felt authentic at the moment.
Okay, yes, that's exactly. I really want somebody to give me an expression that works just exactly as you said it. It just works there. So
I'm sure Bolalong will think of something.
Yeah, Bolalong will come back. He always gives great ideas while we're doing these shows. Yes.
I will look forward to that. So in any case, here we are with this part of our brain that was built for the society, how we lived 40,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And the good news is that there's this other part of our brain, this part right here, called the cerebral cortex, that's in charge of our higher functions. So is to cut us all some slack for following our amygdala, our lizard brain, over a cliff about 50 times a day. I mean, I'm as susceptible to it as anyone. And yet we have this other part of our brain that is built to be more savvy. It's built to decide what we give our attention to. And that's the trick. When something takes us off our feet, when something strikes us as so wrong, in the instant, in the moment, if we can just pause for a millisecond and not follow that first impulsive emotion over a cliff, we can shift up to our more savvy brain, and we may react the same, but we may not. And what I've noticed is that first reaction can change the future.
Yeah.
If something inspires contempt in us and we want to just fire right back and we can pause, we can change contempt to curiosity.
100%. Yeah.
I had this experience. I was recently staying with my brother for 10 days, and he's very intense. He's a former F-15 fighter pilot, very, very intense. And I did something really dumb. We'll just go there. I'll let it go there. So I did something really stupid. I turned on a water pump at a cabin that's on the family farm, and I didn't check to see if there were broken water pumps.
Oh, you froze.
He had luckily gone by the cabin and found all this water pouring out. So he burst the door.
Sorry, one moment, Lynda, one moment, right? You mentioned before that the family might be coming on the network. So in case they are, make sure they don't, because you've been breaking up a little bit the last 2 minutes. So if you need to shout at your son, say, stop using the internet, then you can do that now. Or we can continue just to make sure that that you've been in and out the last minute or so.
Okay, let me make sure that I'm getting as much bandwidth from this group
I love
as
it.
I possibly can.
Okay, we'll be here. We're not going anywhere.
Okay, because when you start talking about your brother, you got to make sure it's all there, right?
Exactly. We can't let you say, and then.
No.
Oh, that's so funny. It's the best part of our show is that we can actually let things unfold at the rate that they unfold.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those that are with us on Monday, Bambos and I are going to be roaming the cemeteries of Amsterdam, doing a show on death.
One cemetery, Andy. It'll probably take a day to walk through it.
So we're going to walk and just have a random talk, just having discussions around death.
And it's going to have an umbrella.
Yeah, because it may rain. Yes. It'll be our first experiment in doing something outside, actually. That'll be very exciting. I'm looking forward to that.
How does it feel to be dead?
Yes, we can do interviews. I actually would like to look at some of the headstones and just sort of feel into what comes up for me as I look down.
Yeah.
Because there's headstones that are often of like younger of the kids. Those are harder to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, so I sent my
it's great.
daughter zooming around the house.
Brother.
Yeah, let's get you back to the brother action.
Okay. Because this is a perfect example of this change from contempt to curiosity thing. Yeah. I really, something just hits us, takes us off our feet. This giant of a man shouting at me for doing something rather stupid, which he's right about. And, but, no one likes to just have the blast come at them.
No.
And, oh, man, I wanted to light into him because I wanted to go point by point, contempt all over the place, baggage from 40 years. No, nothing good will come of that.
Yeah.
Dr.
Especially because he's bigger.
Yeah.
So I took my own advice. I just paused as he was just unloading on me. I just paused and I changed contempt to curiosity. When he finally ran out of steam, I said, I'm so sorry. I just didn't think it through. First of all, that's another thing that's not happening in our society. People aren't willing to just say how sorry they are.
Yeah.
There's something in our egos, something in.
Because it's like if you say, I'm sorry, in some weird way, people have the burden that now I have to take full responsibility for something in the back of their heads they're not even aware of. Like, it's easy to say sorry, but the thing is, but if I say sorry, then that means I'm admitting, and now I have to, as opposed to just saying, hey, I'm sorry, which costs nothing.
So, yes, it costs nothing, and it adds volume to the grace in the space between two people. It adds so much grace.
Yes.
So I said, I'm so sorry for not thinking that through. I'm not sorry for a million other things you just yelled at me for, but I am sorry for not thinking that through. And then I asked the most thoughtful question I could ask. And all of a sudden it was like a lift. It was like, that's not how he expected me to react, of course, because I can be fiery, just like we came from the same fiery father. But it was so much more productive. And, we ended up having a great talk that we probably should have had 10 years ago over this otherwise explosive situation. And we were able to laugh about it the very next day and not add insult to injury, which is what we do. So change contempt to curiosity. I say to people all the time, life is very complex. If you think that somebody else their point of view is just off, they've lost their morals.
Yeah, there's something there that I'd love to touch on, though, and this is the challenge. If I am to say to someone, hey, turn that content into curiosity, then the only way I know that can be achieved is with a higher level of consciousness around an individual's lack of, say, responsibility. So in saying that, what I'm saying is that if they actually see that they have contempt, then that means they haven't taken responsibility for their own feelings yet. So you have a massive shift in your consciousness, because doing it not authentically doesn't change anything. So if you try to say, oh, I'm going to turn content into curiosity, but you don't do it authentically, then people get even more aggressive sometimes, because they say, you're not really asking me a question, you're trying to make a point.
Right.
So it really, yeah.
Oh, you are so one step ahead of me, Andy. Yes.
Sorry, I'll step back.
No, that's exactly the point I was going to make. See, contempt is one gnat's eyelash from outrage. Like, it's like the whole, it's like a lot in society. A lot of people are walking around with so much contempt that in an instant they can be triggered to go into outrage, and we can never recover from outrage. Marriages don't recover from outrage. Parental relationships don't.
If you look at the videos that are recorded of people who flip out, you know they're great people, and then they had this contempt raised in them, and then they had one instant they flip, someone records it, and then the rest of their lives they're that person. Yeah.
Yes. So you nailed it when you said, okay, so if I change contempt to curiosity with my brother, I can't ask a question that I already know the answer to. It can't be some gotcha question. It can't be, I'm asking this question so I get this answer and then I can answer. It can't be any of that. You just have to ask something you're truly curious about. So here's what happened in my story. It would go this way in every single circumstance. So I sat there and I took it, and then I said, I'm sorry. And then I said, Alex, what really worries you? Because you turned the water off, so we know it's not still running down there. What really worries you about what's going to happen next? Because I didn't understand. That was a real question. And he goes, have you ever been in the crawl space under Grandma's cabin?
Have you ever been where?
In the crawl space, the little area that's under the cabin.
And I said, no. He goes, it's maximally 16 inches tall. It's full of dead mouse carcasses and wood roaches. And now I'm going to have to crawl under there and clean up this mess. And, the very next day I crawled under there. And when I came out, there was a mummified mouse stuck, kind of embedded in my elbow.
Too much information.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, you had compassion. You had compassion at that moment for his situation. Yeah.
That's right. So he did have a very good reason, which I didn't appreciate at all. I thought the crawl space was 4 feet tall. I thought it was concrete floor. No, dirt, dead mice.
Wow. This story, I've shared this story often, but I'll share it again because the context is so perfect, is that my dad was always verbally abusive, and he always spoke poorly of my mom. And what happened was there was dynamic that formed that he'd say negative things about my mom, and then I'd get triggered, and then I would defend my mom because I really glorified her, especially after her death. And then we wouldn't talk for 5 years. Like that was kind of the pattern. It was like, and so after many years, I'd done so much work that I no longer was dependent on anything he said. There was no codependency. Like, he could be him, I could be me, and that's okay. And you can say whatever you want because I don't need you to say things in a way that I'm comfortable anymore. So that was like a kind of a maturation to adulthood. We were two adults instead of a son needing the love of dad, right? And he came, and I mean, I use the words because it's his words, it's not nice words, but he said, your mom was a real cunt. And like that would have set me off, and bang, we're off to the races. And it was this moment, and it was on the streets of Amsterdam. And it was sort of like, it took me back because I no longer reacted the way I would have reacted before. And I just looked at him and said, she died so many years ago. What's going on with you? Like, not what's going on with you. That still would have asked some responsibility. It's like, what makes that so come up for you right now? It's a far more open question. And then he just started to cry. So it was like, I even explained now, it gets emotional. He just started to cry. And it went from him feeling unseen and unheard for that years to immediately us just becoming much closer through the interaction. And yeah.
So that's fundamental. these two stories, they're two in a billions and billions of stories that you and I just told about moments where we got really curious and we reserved somebody else's dignity.
Yeah.
And the key there to me is realizing that if somebody behaves in a way that you just can't comprehend, it just seems crazy, it's probably because there's something major you don't know. I remind myself of this all the time now.
Yeah.
You know, there's a conservative talk show host that recently passed away that I was hoping to chat with someday, because I don't believe you get the heart of a lion like that. Now you can quibble over whether he was right, wrong, or evil or great or what, all that stuff, but I don't believe you get the heart of a lion without some life experience that explains that.
Yeah.
And I think if we can change our contempt to curiosity, we can hear these things and the other person can feel seen and heard, and we don't have to agree at the end of it. That my brother and I do that all the time. We just have real conversations where we feel heard and seen, and then we can walk away and feel okay with the fact that we don't agree. Like, why is agreeing the goal?
Yeah.
How about just preserving the other person's dignity and making them feel heard and seen, and going, I think I just learned something.
Yeah, we've had some interesting talks in this domain in the last week, actually. One was Neil I can't pronounce Niall Gagan, who, when you talked about neuroplasticity, he has something that he was working with called Coherence Therapy, which basically takes an idea that we've created a neural pathway to, and it helps the individual establish a different neural pathway where they actually have the same experience differently. And he does it through some techniques similar to some of the work I'll be doing. But that was one thing as you spoke that came up for me. And in some ways, it's, are we able to take an idea that's so strong in our system and let go of it in a way that lets us reconnect with the same thing, but in another way, right?
And I think curiosity does that.
Yeah.
If we get curious about why somebody who's been able to hold a job their whole life and raise a family and stuff, we get curious about how they can think so different about something than we do.
Yeah, but that curiosity, I keep going back to it. I love, because I'm so when I first took my journey 10 years ago or so, or whenever 15, when I started doing my initial courses, the first courses I did were on curiosity, just in corporate kind of meetings, like and what I noticed was that curiosity comes the instant that an individual can see that they don't know. But the fact is, it's really hard for an individual not to admit it, because it's not a thing of admitting. It's like a fish in water. You don't even know you're in water. So people have such strong beliefs that to help them see that actually they have the belief, because even that is not clear to them. That is its own massive awakening. Like, oh my God, I am a byproduct of my beliefs. People wouldn't even be able to grasp that.
I think you're absolutely right.
Anything going on for you? Because you're looking over. I didn't know if someone's coming up for you.
Oh no, I was taking that in.
Okay.
I love this funny little saying. I always say a worm in horseradish thinks the whole world is horseradish.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you explain people who live in really dangerous or negative kind of constant, a constant worldview or a constant context in their life is negativity, is that, just as you said, a fish thinks the whole world is water.
Yeah. So when you said curiosity, I love it. And then my stomach turns, because I'm like, like, it's the word makes all the sense of the world. It's so clear. And yet, how do I take a liberal and a conservative in America and say, you know what? Whatever you've self-identified as, that gives your life meaning, because it gives their life meaning. It's more than just an interest. It's an identification. It's like, I am this, I'll fight to my grave. People that stormed the Capitol, if you looked at it from the standpoint that they were being told that this was because the election was, they were I would cheer them on. They were actually doing they were doing the most beautiful thing that you could imagine. It's sort of like, wow, like I wish I could have those guts. That's how you would see. But it doesn't look at the underlying premises that the identity is the thing that isn't being reflected on at times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been looking at something related to this and the power of the pause in relation to something you just referred to, which I heard some thought leader call the self map.
Okay.
So apparently we each have psychologically a map of ourselves, and it contains all the things that we hold precious. Just you name it, the things that we hold precious, that we think defines ourselves and makes our life feel like it matters, and sense of belonging and all those things. And apparently we will just fight tooth and nail to protect that self map.
Yep.
No matter how much ignorance we have to practice, no matter how we have to do gymnastic convolutions to make things make sense that we're doing or saying or putting our time towards, we will do a great deal to protect our self map.
And give me the answer.
Okay.
What did he say? How do you break the self map? That's what I'd love to know.
So I've learned some things about this self map from the innovators that we've written about for Ever Widening Circles. So what happens with the let's go back to the beginning where we were talking about, I started Ever Widening Circles. I kept rolling along, having these downward spiral conversations with people until one day I got an email from a young man who was 19 years old, who I'd known since he was a toddler. And he was writing me from a very bleak place in the world. He'd signed up for the army thinking that's how he could make the world a better place. And here he found himself in this godforsaken place. And I'm the one he thought of. I must have said enough good things or indicated that I knew how to find something to celebrate, such that he wrote me a really sad email. And that was what made the tipping point for me. I said, I went on this great search of the internet to find some place with no politics and something that generations could appreciate for good news, because his real problem was that he thought the world was not even worth living for.
Wow.
And when I couldn't find it after 2 weeks, I just snapped and I invented it. And that's how Ever Widening Circles actually came to be. It was from this email from this 19-year-old boy. What I actually did that day was send him a list of my favorite TED Talks.
Wow.
That's all I had.
Yeah.
So I started writing one article every day on anything under the sun to prove it's still an amazing world. And as you pointed out, not puppies in mailboxes kind of stories, like real science, technology, innovation that was not getting any oxygen in our current news cycle. So along the way, I've gotten to know a lot of incredible innovators who are doing the most extraordinary things. And I found that the answer to that question, how we get out of this cycle with our amygdala, we can look to these innovators for some clues. So let's pick on one I know named Topher White. Have you ever heard of this guy who's figured out how to save all the remaining rainforests with cell phones?
Oh, I just saw on your TED Talk you mentioned
Yes,
this.
the old cell phones. Oh my gosh. He's a perfect example of what I call the innovator's recipe.
Yeah.
So the people who are tackling problems large and small that they just are, passionately thrown themselves into, whether it's keeping the local humane society open or saving all the rainforests with old cell phones. One thing they do is they can't afford enemies. They just cannot afford enemies because there's already so much of weight against their idea flourishing that they can't be creating enemies along the way. So the best ideas in the world are often have somebody at the core that has figured out a way to not need an enemy. You know how a lot of things in this world need an enemy?
Yeah, of course.
Or else they don't exist.
Yeah.
But Topher White's idea, Skateistan, all the things I mentioned in the TED Talk, they don't need an enemy. They are just brilliant ideas and win-wins all the way around. So what they do is, I've noticed, is that they don't let things take them off their feet. they don't have that luxury. They get one hard blow after another against their being able to make progress, just like us in our daily lives. Some days it feels like I just get one blow after another, and yet they stay on their feet, and they they use their mind. They make sure that what's top of mind is their goal. Like if you have a goal right now just to survive the pandemic, okay, survival is a good thing. We all have to survive.
Yeah.
But if your goal is to thrive, to find opportunity in disaster, you're going to look for other things. You're going to be seeking other information. This brain of ours that's on a constant seeking expedition, trying to survive and thrive. If you can shift up from the amygdala, that fight or flight part of your brain, to this more savvy part, you are going to make choices that adapt your brain. Back to that part of our discussion, your experiences of the world are going to change the way your brain works and the connections there. So I tell people to pause, shift up to the more savvy part of your brain, and decide what to give your attention to. Because neuroscience tells us that anything can stay top of mind, anything. And if you're clicking on every single crazy person's comment on Facebook and adding your own to the dialogue, then that's what's going to be top of mind. You're going to develop neural pathways that just get stronger and stronger and stronger towards opposition and division and negativity and fear of the other, scarcity, all those things.
Yeah.
But if you shift up and say, I'm not going to give my attention to that. I'm going to seek goodness. I'm going to seek signs of progress. I'm going to seek others who are more in line with the world I want to see. Then those neural pathways develop. I mean, this is just science. It's not even about positive thinking. People.
Yeah, it's nice. And it gets to another kind of point Bombas and I have often discussed as well, is that the people you surround yourself with also will define how you go, how you think through things, the energy you bring in. And I spend a lot of time alone. Like I really like to be alone. And I find that when people come in, then I actually want to make sure that there's an energy there that enhances whatever I'm experiencing. Because as soon as I bring in the depressive energy, then it's almost, I'm now being drawn out of whatever it is. And it's not a problem because I can hold space for it. But I do feel like it's work, because I'm now holding space for something that, and I can show compassion and all that. But I often say that's what I get paid for. It's like not where I want to be, but hey, I'll be there. And sometimes people pay for it, that kind of feeling.
Absolutely. Let me give you mentioned the ABC. It fits perfectly right here. I'd love to give people kind of a practical tip.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people might think that someone like me, who's published thousands of articles about inside innovation and really is pointing to this other version of reality that we're not seeing enough of. So you might think that I would be advising people to just disconnect from social media. Don't watch the news, all those sort of really radical things. And I don't. I tell people that the news, the internet are human constructs. That's all they are. They are nothing more. And just like any human construct, it should be a tool. And like a hammer, it can be used to build things or it can be used to demolish things. That's it. It's our choice. When you get a hammer in your hand and you want to hang a picture, you're going to consciously use that to just tap that little tiny hole in the wall. You're not going to just wail away and demolish the drywall. And the internet and all human constructs have this ability for us to decide how they go in our lives. So here's my tip for social media. Don't just pull the plug. You need to be able to go there and see your sister-in-law's new baby or whatever. But make sure you go there with a purpose. Maybe there's some cause that you really love. You need like to chime in on the Brittany Spaniel Facebook group or whatever it is. Go there with a purpose and then go away and have a real life. Because before the internet, we had a real life. We lived our lives. And now, because of what we talked about, our amygdala, this this our brain, the part of our brain that's constantly scanning the world for danger and disorder,
Yeah.
it's so easy to fall into that. Once we go to see the baby picture, then we notice this other thing, this other thing, this other thing. Okay,
The word that
so
comes
you
from me,
alluded to it. Go ahead.
sorry, the word that comes from me is addiction.
Yeah, this is our amygdala is addicted to for a good reason. We can thank it. If you're here, it's because your ancestors were good at bad news. We are addicted to some people call it doom scrolling because we're following our primitive impulses. We're looking for signs and danger and disorder that might affect our lives. But I'm saying pause. Don't click on anything that won't bring you to a higher, more elevating mindset, because we're all in charge of what's top of mind here. So I give people this. Don't click on anything in ABC mode. Just don't. You know how we're all at lunch, we're sitting on our phones, we're going like this and clicking for a millisecond, and then we're out. Click, 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 millisecond, and we're out. So first of all, that's giving something I call link juice. That's amplifying and giving all the oxygen on the internet to all those negative things that appealed to our lizard brain. Nobody really wants to know that that's what they're contributing to, the chaos and the noise. So if you just think of these three things, don't ever click out of anger, A, boredom, B, or kind of morbid curiosity. When we click on the blobfish, we get more blobfish.
Yeah.
When we click on the scary headline, death ships docked in Miami, these headlines, they're all created to capture and hold our attention with neuroscience. They're using neuroscience against us. So if we never click out of anger, never, and when I say click, I mean, if you engage with anything, people are counting every click we make on the internet. So everything you engage with, you are literally voting for. That's one of my big things in the
I had a friend recently. I was walking with him, and he made some news, and he had a friend call him and say, "Hey, I'm looking on the internet, and this is what I'm finding." And then he did the same search, and then he had a whole different internet, and then he went into discussion. Listen, you're finding it because you're clicking everything negative, so it's giving you more of that. I don't find it because I don't click on it, and the other person just didn't want to have any of it, Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that if you ask most reasonably tech-savvy people, they know that algorithms are controlling what we see next. But we aren't acting like we know that, because if we actually acted like we knew that, we wouldn't click on any of that craziness.
Yeah.
Because we know that the internet serves us what we last clicked on. It's trying to do something good. It's trying to make a shortcut. Yeah. But if we never click out of anger, if we never click out of boredom or morbid curiosity, I think that would eliminate about 80% of the chaos that we see in the screens in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had people tell me that one statement that your click is a vote has ruined their lunchtime scanning the internet completely.
Yeah.
But it is a choice of what we want going forward. And the lovely thing about this is that we're not victims of the internet. It is ready for a reimagining. There is no technology, no invention, human invention ever since the wheel that didn't get an upgrade.
Yeah.
And what happened with the internet is that we just rushed into it so quickly that it never got that second, third, fourth iteration.
Yeah, it's almost like we got it, but we didn't really know how to use it to serve us yet. That's what we're still figuring out. We have some comments that came in. Neil van der Laan, it says, if we look at happiness as something that grows once we keep our attention on it, wouldn't it then be trainable, same as conditioning yourself to work out a fixed amount of times per day or week?
Exactly. This is where science plays into everything I talk to people about. It's not wishful thinking. It's not positive thinking. This is most of this is based in neuroscience, what we give our attention to expands. If you tell yourself a scary story, you believe that story, and you make your next decision and your next one based on
I
that.
mean, it's funny if you look at also sort of the evolution of training and techniques that have happened over the years, like some of those early techniques, which still come in as the affirmations, right? So these affirmations you give yourself in the mirror in the morning. And if you think about it, that really is an extension of what you're describing here is it's not that you're finding it out, you're giving it to yourself in these moments.
Yes, a perfect example of this is, now we've all forgotten this because we've just been on a one disaster after another roller coaster. But before there was a pandemic, there was this time period in September, October, November of 2019 when the rainforests were burning in Brazil.
Yeah.
Anybody remember that? You couldn't turn on the news.
Obviously.
Right. Pick your fire. Then there was the Australian fire after that. Okay.
And the refugees in Greece.
So, here's how it works. If you make sure you're getting a dose of the good news, of the thoughtful people, of the progress being made in the world. So when I watch the news and see the rainforest burning, I can hold that horrifying feeling in one hand. But I know Topher White's story. I know that he's figured out a way to save all the remaining rainforests with old cell phones, and none of that burning problem would be happening if Topher had his way with the world, if people knew about his technology. And it is growing in the right direction now. But I can hold both. I'm not being blinders, head in the sand. I can reassure, I can see the story, and I can go, okay, thank God for the Topher Whites of the world. And I can go forward with my day thinking all is not lost.
Yeah.
There are these amazing people out there, and thank God for them. And then I can give my attention to them. I can send Topher $3. I can send him my old cell phone. I can support somebody local who's trying to do a similar thing. We don't have to be taken off our feet. If you know more, you know stories that of hope and contrast that can keep you moving forward each day and being a part, choosing what you want to be a part of.
Yeah. How has it changed your life? Because obviously you started this, you were a dentist, so it's not like what a dentist says, well, I've been trained to become a media, a global media sensation. So how has that journey been for you?
Well, as I mentioned at the outset, almost all my insights come from the graceful comments of others, or the kind of ordinary person wisdom. Here's a good example, and this goes with our contempt and curiosity conversation as well. So this is the way dentistry has affected my ability to do what I do with ever-widening circles, which now is pretty much 80-20. I do ever-widening circles and the conspiracy of goodness with 80% of my time, and I'm only in the office about 20. But this is the way it works. So I have a patient come in, and in the fall, every single patient is wearing camo in Vermont, and everybody's, all the men are hunters. And the first question I ask is, John, did you get your deer yet? Because this is everything where I live.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a nature nerd, so maybe I don't really care so much about whether John got his deer or not, but here's what I do care about. So he tells me whatever he says, and I said, John, did you sit in a deer stand for hours and hours and hours in the forest and wait for that deer to walk by? Like, what's your mode? And he says, yeah, I sat there for 6 hours the other day. And this buck, and he gives me the story. And then I said, John, I'm a nature nerd. What do you see? What do you hear when you're sitting there in the forest, completely motionless and silent yourself? For 6 solid hours, tell me everything. I will never have the ability nor the patience to do that. Tell me everything you see. And then he will describe the most amazing world. So we don't have to get in a fight about whether I like hunting or not. We don't. That's not where we connect.
Yeah.
We can connect over what he saw and what he thought about it and how it changed his day, to learn, to know. And it's something we both care about, and that's how we go forward, with curiosity.
Beautiful. I actually
This is
thought
the
to
way the
myself,
dental practice works into my insights with
I was
everyone.
going to say, I had this vision of me going to you and having to get a tooth removed, and you saying, Andy, aren't you grateful you had that tooth for 50 years?
I would probably say something like that.
It-
I would probably find some way to turn it in. I know I would. I do it every day. That's what I do. I turn it
Yeah.
into a positive. If people
Yeah.
say, I'm so sorry, I haven't been back in 10 years, they're trying to beat themselves up. For
Yeah.
one thing, I have no time for guilt or shame
No,
or
me
blame or
neither.
anything like that.
Yeah.
And I just say, well, it's a darn good thing you're here, because the tooth in front of it looks just about like it did about 5 years ago. We can save that. Let's just focus on going forward.
Yeah. The other teeth we'll have to take out, but that one tooth is perfect.
Yes. And we can save the other one. And so what
Yeah.
if we all just kind of operated like that when these
Yeah.
moments of friction, because, that's another thing we got to get used to. There is nothing good. These innovators, they've taught me, there's nothing good and special and precious that gets created without friction.
Yeah.
Friction is part of collaboration and a part of getting to something new that no one could have come up with all by themselves.
No.
And we got to stop expecting everything to be smooth sailing
Yeah.
and figure out a graceful way to get through friction.
Yeah. What are you going to say?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
just sitting here for the hour, just taking you in.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's like, also, I used the word fuck with a friend of mine, and she actually told me that she doesn't want that kind of language around her because words carry energy. And in my life, I just use it very freely. And when she said that to me, there was a deeper, I noticed there was a deeper understanding that I was missing. And when I'm with you, somehow that teaching I got from her, I'm seeing you embodying that.
Oh, that is so kind. That is so kind. I believe that we all have this stream of commonality, like me and the hunter, like you just expressed to me, like Andy and I experienced when that very first conversation. Heck, that was almost 2 hours we talked that day, Andy.
Wow.
Complete strangers. If we can get rid of this baggage that we're all dragging along, we can get to these moments of connection. But we have no chance if we're just walking around with a level of contempt like here, waiting to boil over into outrage.
Yeah.
We'll never get there. One of my favorite stories, do you guys remember an astronomer, one of the first good science communicators, named Carl Sagan?
I remember the name, of course.
Carl Sagan was the guy who said billions and billions of
Yeah.
stars. He was very famous for saying the word billion in a funny way. So he was very popular. He was the Neil deGrasse Tyson of the 1990s. So people used to always ask him, Carl, do you think human beings will ever get to Mars? And he used to say, well, I think a better question is, who will we have to become to be able to get to Mars?
Nice.
I think he knew that we could send a spaceship there, but we'd all kill each other on the trip. The spaceship might arrive, but we would have killed each other.
Yeah.
We're just following our impulses over a cliff too much.
Yeah.
It's just no way to drive. It was a way to drive when the world was full of saber-toothed tigers.
Yeah.
But now we're full of information, and it's just not a practical approach.
No. Just to share, I had a story that a few days ago, I was walking through the park, and there were kind of, a group of these mentally disabled individuals being taken care of by a caretaker. And because of the traffic, I had to move away from someone coming at me, which meant that I moved closer to the group. And then this man in the group, he grabbed my arm, and it was really funny because for me, I didn't react negatively, nor, I touched his hand back and smiled at him and just created a moment of connection. And of course, the caretaker is freaking out because she's thinking, oh, wow, what's going to happen? Maybe this bad situation is going to emerge. And earlier today, I didn't think about it again because it happened and I walked on. But I realized that as you were speaking right now, that my amygdala never got charged. So there was never a reaction to defending myself. There was just presence with the thing that was there in the moment. It stayed with me, not because I thought it was special, but it was only afterwards I realized, oh, for the woman, and when I saw her reaction, realizing in so many instances there would be people that would react negatively and create a real issue potentially there. And then I had a lot of compassion for her, because in that way, wow, imagine that job and how much challenge there is for her to manage 5-6 people that she's alone with, just trying to make sure they stay in this sort of, close enough that she can take care of them, Yeah.
I thought she was reacting to COVID.
She may have, but I don't think so. I didn't get that impression. No.
Well, that you should bring that up. That's a really, I think, one of the real hard things for people that I don't hear people actually articulating. But this being able to touch the other, you said, I put my hand on his. That is what we're built to do.
Yeah.
They know that the Neanderthals took care of the people with disabilities. They found in caves, bones that were broken of people that were 50 years old. And that was old. That was ancient back in the caveman days.
Mm-hmm.
They know that there were individuals that had to have been taken care of. So this impulse to take care of the other, to put your hand on somebody as a way of signaling that you're okay, I'm okay, you're okay, we're good.
Yeah.
I think we've missed that. Of course, you might imagine, I'm a hugger in the dental office.
Yeah.
And I just miss that so much, being able to have a patient sit up and hug.
Yeah. I wanted to do a show on that topic just because it's such an issue. And Bambo said that subject is too sensitive for me. And that's maybe one of the, this was early on. You don't remember it. I said, I wanted to do a show on how hard it is to be without touch. And then you said at that time, maybe now it wouldn't be an issue, but then you're like, Andy, I can't do it. It's just too emotional for me right now.
Well, and many of us have all kinds of experiences in that realm. My dad was a healer. He definitely had, if there is a spooky part of me, I do believe in the healing touch. I just know that when you put your hands on someone and you mean well, and they know that you're in the service of others, there is a magic there that's hard to replace.
Yeah.
And have you seen the video? I wanted to do the article on this so bad, but it was right at the beginning of COVID. There was this movement, and I think it may have been in Belgium, somewhere in your neck of the woods, where these people would just go out and they would wear a placard that would say "free hugs," and the placard, I think, probably did two things. It probably left enough of a social barrier there so that my big lunch lady boobs weren't squished right up against somebody else, and then you got all that creepiness going in,
Yeah.
So they would wear the placard and said "free hugs," and they would put a blindfold on.
Yeah.
This was a really interesting thing, and they would just stand there like this, and people who were game would just walk up and hug them.
Yeah.
And the video had a kind of a magic to it, kind of a quality that you couldn't stop watching. And like I said, we haven't done the article because we would dive into the neuroscience of that on Ever Widening Circles. We wouldn't just throw up that video and say, it goes into exactly what we're talking about. Like, where is that human need for touch?
Yeah.
And so I think we're all looking forward to that.
We had the man who started the Free Hugs campaign I think it was Juan Man was his name. I always laugh because my wife kept saying "one man show." It's the one man show. But yeah, Juan Man is the creator of the Free Hugs, and yeah, we had a really nice time with him on the show some months back. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up because I think I'm going to want to talk to him on my podcast for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
We are way over our time already, so it would be nice just to share some of the things that came in from Christina Griffone. So good. it gives people back a sense of agency. That was earlier in our talk. Bola Long says Lynda is such an inspiration, and he also says I hug and COVID-19 is such a turnoff. So yes, he's also there suffering.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the work you do in the world, and yeah, we're grateful that you took the time to be with us today.
You can share your
Thank you
links
for sharing
in the
it.
comments, right?
Yeah, we'll share the links as for the people that want to have looks at the everwideningscircles.com. And you also have the book that's available on Amazon,
Yeah.
and the TEDx talk. It's on the website as well, which is really great. That goes into the ABCs that we just discussed as well. So yes, those are
Lovely.
all, we'll leave links for all those things.
We're gonna
I
have to
have
figure
something,
out.
one last thing I'd just like to share.
Yeah.
We recently really had this notion that if as many people as we believe want a better world and are doing whatever they can and they're doing what they can with what they have,
Yeah.
it seems like we're all just these points of light, just almost shouting into the blackness, the darkness.
Yeah.
So we created recently the Conspiracy of Goodness Network. And it, my daughter hates it when I announce it this way, but it's kind of like we took the best of the big four social media platforms, and we created a place without all the mean, yelling, angry people.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is create a place for people who have goodness top of mind. Back to what we were talking about earlier. If we have to come together. We have to come together. Otherwise, we're each just these little points of light. You, me, Topher White, Skatistan people. And I think these times call for a literal conspiracy of goodness, like people coming together who share a common vision for what's possible in the future if we elevate our best selves. And so, for people who are really, really wanting the company of others, I would recommend, even as self-serving as it seems, for people to check out the Conspiracy of Goodness Network, because there you're going to find people that care about the same things. And when we come together, there's no telling what we can do. We've seen it over and over through human history. A conspiracy of goodness is what has gotten us out of the darkest times.
Thank you.
Shall we figure out how to bring her on again?
Yeah, we already have the next topic. We'll just do that off air. Thank you for being with us again. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I look forward to calling you and having the next discussion of how to position our next call together, our next show.
Okay, let's do it.
Thank you. Send you
All
a
right.
hug.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Yeah.
I think this was a great show.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. I mean, the thing is that, and for the people that don't know, we actually had a different title for this show. And I realized in the last moment that I'm hearing what she's doing, and I can't imagine that I would discuss anything other than what we just discussed. It just didn't. And I even laughed at myself because it also was speaking towards the whole discussion. I was looking for another topic to find something catchier or more interesting, whatever the idea was. And I totally lost sight that the goodness was actually something that is so sorely lacking that itself is worth spending time on to discuss. So that was really beautiful. Yeah. And I love, again, it's always these serendipity lives that we've had in our shows, where people who maybe didn't intend to do something all of a sudden stumbled upon it, and then all of a sudden that just became the thing that carried their lives and gave it purpose. And I really find those stories beautiful. People struggling to say, what's my life's purpose? And then somebody just drops in their lap and says, apparently this is what I've now been called to do. And to touch on one thing we didn't touch on, there was a big loss for me a week ago, in that we had our woman who does I Stop, what was it called?
I Stop Children's Rape.
It was what was the molestation? So Marsh Schneider, that was her family name. I forget now her first name. But what was really, it was someone who came onto our show who stops basically child abuse, and she did that through puppetry. And for me, when we have someone on the show that I'm so in admiration of, because she just said these puppets can be used as a means of supporting children that actually have very little hope, because it's hard to expose it until it's too late. And when she passed last week, unexpectedly, it was just a loss, and a celebration, right? Because in some ways you see those lives, and I just sit in such admiration of them. So yeah, for those that haven't seen that episode, it's very it's worth going back to. Yeah. So that's it for today. We've got I don't even know what day it is today. Is it Tuesday or Wednesday?
Wednesday.
It's Wednesday. So we got 2 more shows this week. And I'm not sure exactly what they are, but I'm sure that they'll be interesting if you come and join us.
And where we're going to do that, Andy?
We're going to do it on A Wonderful Chaos. Thank you.
Indeed.
Bye. Hey.
Hi. I'm sorry. I didn't understand that last bit. I thought we were not live anymore.
Well, it didn't matter because you're off air anyways. We can't hear you.
Okay.
So we kind of do the intro, and then I stopped doing the outro, but I said, Bambo said he liked it. So I said, okay, let's bring it back on again. So now we do kind of a short summary that the audio engineer will sometimes take into the editing process.
Okay. Great. It's just lovely what you guys are doing. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I know what you're feeling with this woman that passed. But I've turned that into a positive in my life because I've lost so many patients.
Yeah.
And I say, what's that one thing I'm going to remember forever that Mary taught me, or whatever. And, as long as we keep doing that, people live on in and through us, and their legacy is more important than just their time on earth.
Yeah. Well, she's also she was written in the book as well. So, we had, she really did have a big impact that I already felt like it was kind of immortalized. And I was even raising for her charity, because I had someone that I was working with that said, Andy, if you could give to one thing, what would you give to? And then that was kind of the thing I said, this is the one thing in life where it's like so on the edge of like, wow, it's intense. You're going into a school and you're exposing kids that are being molested. So, I mean, I can't imagine anything that's more intense. So, yeah.
I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but in the last 4 years, we can talk about opportunity and disaster.
Are we still live?
Check. I don't think